So if you're listening to me right now, I'm going to assume you're not in bombed out Beirut, bombed out Tehran, anywhere around there, or the imploding Kamala Harris campaign office. If you're joining us here on Rally for the Republic, I assume that you're not just one of those negative, weird, divisive deplorables that Hillary Clinton talked about in 2016. And now Kamala Harris is using the same rhetoric 8 years later. Of course I'm talking about you. Apparently, we can't get along with them, and we can't accept their delusional worldview. So we are the enemy within. It's kind of interesting that Kamala Harris, with a campaign that is literally going down the tubes day after day, is claiming a new way forward as she admits that she'll be expanding on the Biden agenda while clinging to the same failed tactics that ruined Hillary Clinton's presidential aspirations in 2016. And if that wasn't bad enough, she's got senior Democrats waking up, smelling the flowers, and jumping overboard. This is Bryan Rudnick. I'm your host here on Rally for the Republic. I'm going to get into all this and more right after a quick break. But before we take that break, I have an announcement. As we get closer and closer to Election Day, I want you to know that I'm working to have some very special guests come on the show, that from now through Election Day, and we might even get on video for some of it. So I'll be back in just a moment.
This is a battle cry for the American way of life and a relentless pursuit of truth and justice. It comes from a voice with unmatched experience and unyielding resolve. Join us as we dissect current events and tip the scales in your favor. This is Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
This is Bryan Rudnick, your host of Rally for the Republic. I, again, am fearlessly broadcasting from what will remain the free state of Florida. I say this a lot, but it bears repeating. Everything Kamala Harris does or says is designed to make you like her. It's designed to fool you, and it's not working. And it's simple, the explanation at least. It's because she's an elitist from San Francisco. And everything she's doing is a photo op, and it's fake, and it's phony, and it's failing. And I said before, we just peel back the onion layers week after week to expose her. Every week, she makes it easier to expose her. Just yesterday, Friday morning, I had to go out to some meetings. I had a phone call first with a colleague who's a Black American. The meeting was with some other Black Americans, and they're all from different parts of the country. Some are middle-aged, one was millennial. The man who is not Republican, not a conservative, makes it clear to me every time we talk about politics, but he's a small business owner. He came up in life kind of the hard way. He's a family man. And he says to me that men, Black men, are so offended by Kamala's attempts to lecture them and to send out Barack Obama, of all people, to lecture them. He says she just reminds him of the women in his family that he would choose to stay away from. And at the meeting I went to, a client who flew into town, who's become a great friend, who I believe is a great patriot, a woman of valor who came with her millennial daughter, they laugh at Kamala. They don't think she's Black, not Black enough, Black at all. And they said her attempts to endear herself to Black America are failing. It's kind of like when dogs and babies sniff out people who tell you that they're good with dogs and babies, and then, of course, you put them in a scenario with dogs and babies, and they get exposed, because that's what they say is happening to Kamala. That's the perception that all of America is gathering about her. All these people tell me Black America, except for Kamala's sorority sisters, who are somehow compelled to support her, are going to prove on election night that they've been turned off by her. And that's why you've heard guests on this show say that Donald Trump is going to end up winning more of the Black vote than ever before, and more of the Latino vote than ever before. Because Team Kamala, Team Harris, whatever you want to call them, just continues to double down on stupid. Every single week, they're in a bubble, and they are the ones responsible for perpetuating this perception of phoniness. And you know, they're losing. They know they're losing. They're desperate. Okay. Trump's campaign, you're seeing a big change in positive aspects, positive tactics, and even their morale, because they're winning and Kamala is stooping to every low she can go to. Okay. There is no low she won't stoop to gain this power, to stay in power, to get to the next office, like her entire career when she stepped over somebody. So this week, some of the great examples, okay, because after all, there is no lie she won't tell. There is no sacred religious celebration that she won't desecrate to feed that fantastic ego of hers and let you think that she's doing the right thing when she's not. Because this week, it was disastrous. Okay, the disastrous speech, the disastrous CNN interview with Anderson Cooper. So disastrous, the Democrat analysts admitted they were a disaster. She can't string sentences together. She wants to compare Donald Trump to Adolf Hitler, and she insults Jewish people in the same breath. You know, we were once worried about old Joe Biden, but nobody is actually paying attention to the decline in Kamala's mental health. Why? Because everybody was used to it. They already knew she was a moron. They knew it when she ran in 2019. She's got her Trump derangement syndrome at full speed here, and it's only getting worse. All she's doing is helping to expose that all Democrats who embrace her worldview are liars. It's not just Kamala. It's all these Democrats. Look at Tim Walz. When he showed up, he couldn't operate a shotgun. He's a world-class hunter. Can't operate a shotgun. And then you got a Democratic candidate in Missouri this week, okay, who injures a reporter because they couldn't follow basic principles of firearm safety. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know if you're shooting at a steel target, you might not want to be 7 feet away with a rifle. You might want to take that high-powered AR-15 that the Democrats are always complaining about and bring it out to, I don't know, 25, 50, 100 yards and be a man. But no, they wanted to just pretend to be a man, so they shoot it up close 7 feet away, it ricochets, and it hits a journalist in the arm. Morons. Anyways, there's a whole lot new meaning, as far as I'm concerned, to gun control in America. It's not what the Democrats have been asking for. Republicans should now ask for gun control. Yeah, I said it. Republicans should ask for gun control. And the new definition of gun control should be to keep guns out of the hands of Democrats. Because we have two key examples of Democrats who clearly cannot handle firearms correctly. I don't care what the excuses are. So I'm calling for gun control on Democrats. But I digress. The Democrats are going to prove to us something we've already known, but it's going to get worse this election cycle, that there's no law that they won't break to win this election. I'm not kidding. There's no law. And there is no decency or common sense that they won't violate to try to persuade and dupe voters. You cannot make this up. And I'm going to give you some examples here. You know, Kamala's running around the country and she's trying to impress us. And she's got her surrogates out there. And you heard me talk about some of this the other day. So this week they dispatched Beyonce to promote abortions. They call it reproductive freedom. I call it abortions in Texas because I believe everybody's allowed to procreate freely. So I don't see the problem here. And even the leftist media is now having to admit that Donald Trump supports IVF treatments and having insurance companies and possibly the federal government pay for it. But we're not going to dive into that. So they've got Beyonce out in Texas. She's promoting abortions. I'm pretty sure they mean the killing of babies in the womb, unless they thought it was just the bastardization of country music that she attempted to bring on the scene earlier this year. And earlier we talked about how they dispatched Doug Emhoff and Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff to court Jewish voters in South Florida. The Democrats have been kowtowing, catering to the left like AOC and the Muslims in Detroit so badly that they're now going to lose the Jewish vote in droves in numbers that have not been seen in over 40 years. And their desperate attempt to make up for that loss, they're holding politically motivated Shabbat dinners. And they posted this online. And of course, there was a big uproar. Why? Because like everything else out of Kamala land, it's got to be fake and phony. But this actually desecrated Shabbat, and it was disrespectful to Jewish people. For those of you who don't know, the Jewish Sabbath, Shabbat, starts on Friday night. And there's a dinner, and then it goes all day Saturday until the evening, and there's 3 stars in the sky and so forth. And I'm just summarizing here. We don't work. We're not supposed to work. We're not supposed to drive cars, turn on lights, et cetera, et cetera. Depends how religious you are, but that is the interpretation. Kamala's supposedly Jewish husband goes to start the dinner in true Kamala fashion. You know, remember, this is the woman who trots out the Jewish husband when she needs him, has no use for him otherwise, happens to be Jewish, doesn't prove he's Jewish, and he's got these self-hating Jewish kids that support Palestinians. So instead of celebrating what Jews call, at the beginning of Shabbat, we call it Kabbalat Shabbat. And we sing songs and read psalms and so forth. So it's called Kabbalat Shabbat, and Team Harris decides to change it to Kamalat Shabbat. And instead of trying to make Kamala the next president, what they're trying to do is make her a queen, because the whole concept of Kabbalat Shabbat is to welcome in the Sabbath queen. So here they go again, offending Jewish people in the same week that they refer to Donald Trump as a Hitler. Isn't that interesting? She's going to call him a tyrant and a fascist and Hitler, but she's going to go offend Jewish people yet again. Like her lack of support for Israel wasn't bad enough. And they get everything wrong about the dinner. So you're going to want to sit down to hear this. The plates are wrong. The food's wrong. The location. And that's not the worst part. Okay, the plates they used were for a Seder, for Passover. That happens generally in the spring, right around Easter. Then, and there's a whole reason, laws, rituals for why it's different plates on Passover, which we're not going to spend time on here. Obviously goes to tell you they probably didn't rely upon her Jewish husband or anybody who was Jewish to try to get this optic, this fake and phony optic done correctly. And instead of reading from any kind of traditional Jewish prayer book, Team Kamala decides that they're going to read a book called The Truths We Hold, like it's going to somehow impress the Jewish community that you've taken an extra offensive step to bastardize our weekly holiday, a weekly celebration. So this is what the Democrats are doing. Team Kamala is doing to be fake and phony to bring in Jewish voters that they know they are going to lose in droves, not seen in 40 decades. Okay? They desecrate the celebration of Shabbat with her supposedly Jewish husband who participates in the mocking of it all. You know, I could scream and shout. Every Jew should scream and shout. Anybody who's Jewish and supports Kamala after this, you need to get your head examined. Okay, that's what I have to say about this. Because Kamala doesn't respect Jewish people. She doesn't respect Israel. Do you really think that this woman is going to respect Israel and the Jewish people when she's in the White House, when this is what she's doing now to dupe you into voting for her? Israel's got rockets firing all over schoolyards, cities, civilians. And she wags her fingers in the face of the Israeli government to appease the terrorists in Detroit and in Tehran. And you've seen her body language, and you've heard me talk about her body language, the disrespect towards Netanyahu, or any time she talks about Israel. This is a man who would like to be anywhere talking about anything other than the need to gain Jewish votes or to support Israel. But that's that woman, Kamala Harris, the fake and phony Kamala Harris. That's who she is. And she's just perpetuating what's endemic in the Democratic Party, just like Lucas Kunz in Missouri, who couldn't shoot the AR-15 properly, but somehow he's making another attempt to unseat Josh Hawley out there. So get out there, Americans, and support Josh Hawley against this fake and phony guy that he's running against. Just like Kamala's everyman, Tim Walz, who couldn't use a shotgun. But we're not going to waste time talking about him, I can promise you, because we're not sure. He's not even sure this week if he ever was a coach, if he ever put tampons in a boy's locker room. Such a disgrace of a human being. Somehow these people are the best the Democratic Party could come up with to replace Joe Biden, the man they thought was dignified. They wanted to replace a dignified man with a man who put tampons in the boy's bathroom. What's even more embarrassing about that is that AOC, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders are starting to look normal. I just am thankful that the left wasn't smart enough to put up people like Joe Manchin, who, by the way, was so smart he abandoned them. And then there's John Fetterman, who looks like he could be on the way out the door, or Wes Moore. I think some combination of those three might have actually given them a fighting chance this election cycle. But the left is so crazy, so hell-bent on destroying America and destroying Donald Trump, they could not get out of their own way to put up candidates who might have actually resonated with American voters. And now the press, the media that was fawning all over themselves to help Kamala, now they can't ignore the word salads. Now it's like, ooh, Donald Trump might have been onto something here. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to dive into that, but I'm going to take a quick break. So just stick with me for a moment.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
So this is Bryan Rudnick, and I'm back here. You're listening to Rally for the Republic, and we're talking about Kamala's tactics that America's now rejecting. Even the media is rejecting. Everybody realizes how fake she is, how every tactic she employs fails. It's like dominoes falling, okay? And in a move this week, she was on that supposed CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper, and he's asking her questions, and it just became more ridiculous after more ridiculous. Even David Axelrod, prominent David Axelrod, is Obama's former chief political guru from Chicago. He had to admit that whatever she said is nonsense. Anderson Cooper throws softballs at her about the border, about Israel, whatever it is, she chops it up like a word salad. Okay? Anderson Cooper, would you be stronger in Israel than Trump? She had a 7-minute answer that was nonsensical. She was asked about her policy proposals. She didn't act during the White House. She rambles on about things that haven't been done, need to be done. Like you're asking, what would you do? What didn't you do that you now want to do? A woman can't give an answer. She's asked to speak about women in history. Her answer is honor the women who made history throughout history. It's like that dumb word salad she once gave about July 4th. I highly encourage you to read Kamala Harris July 4th word salad. You will laugh so hard. And it's true. That's the sad part. And there's the moment in time in which we exist in our present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in history in the moment as it relates to not only past, but the future. I mean, that's the kind of garbage coming out of this woman's mouth that some idiots think should be president of the United States. I'm actually surprised she could say that much. When I think about her and the nonsensical platitudes that she's jumbling together and how they're worse than what Joe Biden has to say, it's no surprise that you've got Democrats in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, and Michigan that are starting to embrace Trump's policies and turning their back on her because they want to stay in office, and they get it. They get that people are pissed. They get that people want a candidate who actually can put a sentence together, who's actually going to do something, has done something, will do something. And they know they can't win. They can't embrace these people who want to be their constituents unless they cling to the right policies that are going to help America succeed. And Donald Trump's economic plans and border plans, these people get it. Fighting crime, they get it. Kamala supported crime, they don't get it. Maybe they get a memo to Kamala, but I'm not holding my breath. Because some things you need to understand, and these are just, remember, these are my insights and my perspectives watching these interviews firsthand, by the way, reading the news, reading memos, reading polling, things I've been doing for 30 years, teaching body language, teaching debate. Okay, I've worked at campaigns at every level, state, local, national. I could tell you that this is a desperate campaign. I mean, I'm watching stuff. I'm already getting involved even with races after the 2024 race. I'm talking to people. We're looking at ballot initiatives. We're looking at various candidacies around the country. And, we're having to look at not only what will be the Trump-Kamala effect of 2024, but, even a more local race where we have to look at the politicians and actions they're taking that scream and smell of desperation. Because remember, Trump's policies, people are starting to get it. It's making sense, right? When Kamala can't express anything about the border, when Anderson Cooper asks her about the border and she cackles, and then she basically attacks Donald Trump saying he never got Mexico to pay for it. And Anderson's there like looking at her like, lady, what are you going to do? But there's no answer. Because the campaign is all about herself and only herself. And that never works. Donald Trump gets it. He's got a movement. It's about you, the people, empowering you, that he's just the symbol. And that's what the left doesn't understand, that Donald Trump gets. He's a symbol of American success. He's a symbol of what will defeat the deep state, what will dismantle the deep state. He is truly sacrificing himself, but they want to tell you it's egotistical and narcissist. Okay, every politician's got narcissism, or else they couldn't have the intestinal fortitude to be up there taking those arrows fired at them. And Donald Trump has taken more than any. He's even taken bullets. So let's remember, we got Kamala here, and she is all about herself and how great and wonderful she is. And the only thing she's mastered is attacking Trump. Somehow, no matter what the question is, it's always about Trump being evil, or now, of course, the word is Hitler. So I started thinking about, and this is what I've been telling people all week. When you think about Kamala Harris and you think about the word salads coming out of her mouth, it reminds me of maybe 10 years ago when everybody's website started having these things called blogs. And on the side of the blog, somewhere in the column above, whatever, you would see a bunch of words on the side, and they were called word clouds or tag clouds. And you would tag the articles about the topics and things. And then the words that were used the most, they were standing out, right? They were the biggest. Those various sites were trying to tell you what to pay attention to. So see, Kamala has been filled with these policy briefing books they had to give her to shove in her so she could be prepared for the debates. Remember, for months, she could not do an interview for months. She's not even sure she's doing Joe Rogan yet. And I mean, you only got 10 days left. I'm not even sure how you fit that in when you're supposed to be going state to state. She was in Texas the other day. Houston's not terribly far from Austin. She probably could have made her way there if she wanted to. She's got all these policy briefing books, all this information, stats, figures, facts, you name it. Obviously, she's not good with facts and figures. And then there's the talking points. And somehow the talking points are what's stuck. That's what has stuck in her head, are the talking points. So Trump is evil, Trump is bad, Trump is Hitler. That's what's stuck. That's the word cloud in Kamala's head. That's what's standing out. And that's why those are the only things she can cling onto to get out of that mouth of hers. She's had a lot of things apparently go in that mouth of hers, but the only things coming out are those words. That's the word salad, and that's what you get. And this past week, that's what she did, and she stepped in it. She stepped in it really bad, okay? She wants to cling on to this John Kelly bologna sandwich of uncorroborated past statements of Trump liking Hitler and this and that. So I'm a Jewish American. If you've been listening to the show, you know that about me. You know I'm very proudly Jewish American, and you might have even heard me mention once or twice that I'm the grandson of Holocaust survivors. So when you're going to throw around and banter things about Trump being a Nazi, Trump being a white supremacist, Trump being Hitler, just know that I know the difference. And some of you ought to go back and actually listen to the interview I did with Rabbi Yaakov Menken of the the Coalition for Jewish Values, and hear what he had to say about this and how much of a ridiculous statement, overused statement by the left when they throw these terms out. Because Adolf Hitler killed over 6 million Jews, some of which were my family members. He killed millions of others, homosexuals, transient people, Christians, you name it. I don't recall Donald Trump doing anything like that. So I think it's really ridiculous when the left wants to claim that Donald Trump is Hitler, compare him to that. It's insulting. Okay, they say he's going to have a fascist regime. It's insulting to Jews. It's insulting to anyone who came from a country or where their relatives came from a country where there was some sort of tyrannical or fascist regime or some dictatorial leader, okay? It's insulting. They're throwing around hyperbole, and it's now backfiring. Because when you look at what Kamala has done to the people of Israel, the scourge of anti-Semitism right now, the bombs falling on schoolyards, what is she doing about that? Donald Trump has been caught having had a phone call recently with Netanyahu and said, do whatever you need to do to defend your country and protect your people. Is that something Adolf Hitler would have done? Think about this. The next time you hear anybody compare Donald Trump to Hitler, I want you to look at them and say, do you know the history of Israel? Do you know what the world has tried to do to Israel prior to October 7, 2023? Do you know that Donald Trump defied every diplomatic order, every prior United States administration, the United Nations, and he put the United States Embassy in Jerusalem when nobody else had the balls to do it? That was out of respect and love for Israel and the Jewish people. Would he have been so welcoming to Benjamin Netanyahu before Trump became president, during his presidency when he invited him to the White House? Okay, they had a relationship that predates Trump in the White House, and they continue to maintain it now. They've had multiple phone calls this fall. Would Hitler have made a peace deal in the Middle East like Donald Trump did? Because Hitler was trying to undo things in the Middle East to harm Jews. Donald Trump went in and he made Israel and the Jewish people first and foremost and cut the Abraham Accords and forced everybody in the Middle East except for Tehran to say, hey, time to be nice and play ball with Israel and do business with Israel. So think about that. Think about the significance of those Abraham Accords. It's a legacy of peace that the Democrats have not been able to accomplish. It's a legacy of peace that the Democrats don't want you to focus on. They would rather tell you Trump is a threat to democracy than to tell you while facing a global pandemic, the most hostile Congress any president has ever faced. Remember, we talked about AOC admitting that the impeachment was a farce? You got Harris and Biden, who would rather, like Barack Obama, send plane loads of cash to Tehran instead of supporting Israel. Every week they're threatening Israel. Donald Trump saying, do what you got to do to defend your people. Hitler ain't saying that. Anybody supporting a Hitler-style philosophy ain't saying that. So Harris and her team have one play for about the next 10 days. I can't imagine another lie they'll come up with, but I'm sure they'll come up with one. Let's assume it. Trump is evil. He's a Hitler. I believe the people in the mental health community call that transference. Okay, she's just transferring on to Trump what she is and the way she thinks. Because the Dems, they're going to keep saying Trump's a threat to democracy, that he incites violence. He incites the insurrection. Every day he's inciting an insurrection. They're not limiting it to January 6th, by the way, when they say that. You know, the day that Trump said march peacefully, I might add. The GOP, some leaders in the GOP, from Speaker Mike Johnson to Senate Leader McConnell, have actually asked Kamala Harris just recently to please stop her harmful rhetoric because it's inflaming things. And they're worried that it might cause another assassination attempt on Trump. So to bring this into kind of a fuller perspective, if you will, there was an article that came out from Axios this week, and it was based on a poll. It's entitled, Most Americans Anticipate Post-Election Day Violence, done by a poll, by credible pollsters, is, much that there can be. And the first paragraph states, a majority of Americans anticipate there will be violence in the aftermath of the November election. And it was a Scripps News Ipsos poll. Well, I've got to tell you, in conversations I've had with people around the country, regardless of political affiliations and ideology, there's a lot who believe that no matter who wins November 5th, there's going to be a problem. People agree. Either the left will go back to BLM and Antifa-style rioting if Trump wins, and if they lose, there is concern that some people on the right might act stupid. They might go looking for the lost ballots. They might go looking for another postal worker like we had in Orlando this week who apparently destroyed ballots or attempted to destroy ballots. I've even had a family member who contacted me to say when they went to vote here in South Florida, Donald Trump was not on her ballot. And she had to bring that to the attention of the poll workers who then replaced her ballot so she could vote for Donald Trump. I don't think that's going to be the last of what we hear about these election irregularities, because unfortunately, they're real. I've experienced them. I've been through recounts prior to the 2020 election. Okay, in between 2000 and 2020, there have been recounts. There have been ballot irregularities. There have been election integrity issues in various places around the country. They're not anomalies, and that's very unfortunate. We could probably do at least 2 whole shows on this topic, but I promise you it's not going to be today's topic. Either way, I just want to remind you people to be concerned, be vigilant. Obviously, there's no place for violence in America when it comes to our elections. Upholding democracy, upholding the republic requires, and the reason we have a Second Amendment right is to prevent people from unlawfully taking charge and taking over the country or trying to take charge of us. But by no means should you incite the violence. That is not who we are as patriots, and that's not who we should be. We need to prevent the left from doing it. And if they have chosen to steal the election, if they choose to cheat, then we have other mechanisms by which to fight back. And we need to use that. We need to be smart about it. We need to do better than we did in 2020. Because I am worried, and you should be worried. Okay? Something else that started up being a concern in the Obama administration and then got used by Biden. I was doing some research at least once, maybe more, is the National Defense Production Act. And they could seize ballot machines to stay in power. It's not out of the realm of reality. They've used it for other reasons in manufacturing and green energy and stuff like that. And it's literally something the deep state could use to coalesce around Kamala to keep her in control. It's literally, if you read up on the National Defense Production Act, it's like almost something out of an Ayn Rand novel. And it's scary. So you've got 10 days, stock up on food, stock up on ammo, keep your Second Amendment right in place because who knows, you might need it. I hope not, but you might. And on that note, I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll get into my final thoughts for today's episode.
You are listening to Rally for the Republic with your host, Bryan Rudnick.
Okay, it's Bryan Rudnick here at Rally for the Republic, and I'm back with my final thoughts of the day. Here in this episode, I've tried to give you some very, very deep thoughts. Sorry if it's more deep than you wanted to go today, but it's reality. I want to remind you with the upcoming episodes from now through Election Day, I intend to have some very exciting guests. I might even be turning to video before Election Day, so be on the lookout. But what you really want to hear is my final thoughts, so here we go. You know that I'm a proud American, and I make this show for Americans. This is a show about America for the Americans. It's not for the vegan liberal pronoun crowd. It's not for the deplorables. Yes, it is. Of course it is, because you're deplorable, and that's why you're listening. And that's why it's so deplorable that Hillary Clinton would attack you, and that Kamala Harris would continue to use that kind of rhetoric to attack you. Because this is a show for the people who cling to their guns and religion, and I'm hoping that is you. Why? Because America is a country of people who cling to their guns and their religion, and they cling to their families, and they cling to their faith, and they cling most especially to our freedom, our individual liberties, which we cannot allow Kamala Harris and her friends to take from us. And that's what this election is really about, and what you're going to remind people. Okay? Donald Trump is not running around looking to take our rights away, but Kamala Harris is. Kamala Harris and her cronies are evil, and this election is about good versus evil. We're not saying Donald Trump is perfect, but this is an election where there are literally biblical issues at stake. The land of Israel and the United States is inextricably linked to the success and failure of Israel. So yeah, this is a show for patriots, but it's a show for Americans who care about America and care about Israel. And you have a duty to this nation, to your friends, to your family, to your God, to fight for it. It's up to you to help me spread this word. It's up to you to help make sure America continues to have contempt for Kamala. I mean, she's doing a good job of that for herself, but, let's help her a little bit. Like, let's tell them about when she was at a crowd the other day, I think it was in Wisconsin, and someone said, Jesus Christ is Lord. And she said, you're in the wrong crowd. Could you imagine that? In America, in 2024, we have a candidate running for president. When somebody says Jesus Christ is Lord, she tells them you're in the wrong crowd. Was she in a mosque or a synagogue? I don't think so. She's in the wrong country, people. She should go back to Canada, because this is a nation built on Judeo-Christian ethics. It's why I'm so thankful. Very personally, I want to say this. I'm thankful to the many Christian friends I have who support me as a Jewish American, who support my beliefs, who understand, even some of my colleagues, who understand my religious observance and my celebrations. Some of them have been known to come participate in them, especially in my Shabbat dinners, at my Shabbat table with my family, where we do it right, where we do it the way Jews are supposed to do it, not the way Kamala and her supposedly Jewish husband do it. Trump is not a saint, but he's exactly what we need him to be. He's an ass kicker, and that's what we need for president. It's the only way we're going to destroy the deep state. The good versus evil, people. You've got to destroy the deep state. We've got to dismantle it. And we've got to keep our nation free from the international threats. It's the only way we're going to help Israel to defeat the barbarians at the gate, while Kamala seeks to fight terrorists with word salads. You don't have to be a part of it all, but please help me share this episode with everyone you know that should benefit from it. That doesn't mean everyone you know that won't appreciate it, because voting has started in America. By the time you listen to the show, I know that at least over 30 million people have voted. Could be 40, could be 50, okay? About 100 plus million people should be voting. We need them to vote, but we need them to vote the right way, and you've got to help them to see it. So don't waste time. The future of this nation, the nation of Israel, both fall in your hands. It's not hyperbole. And I want to remind you, instead of just worrying about the presidency or the Oval Office, okay, who's going to control the White House, Donald Trump needs a Congress and a Senate who are going to support him. And he needs governors who are going to support him. And those states need legislators who are going to support those governors. And then, of course, there are the courts in America that right now are mired in some pretty bad people. And if you have the opportunity to live in one of the few states that elects judges, please make sure to elect the right judges. Please. And do your part to share this episode with friends, family, and loved ones. Do it right now. Do not wait. Talk to the people you know supporting Trump. Get them to listen. Get them to the polls. Do whatever it takes to get them to the polls. and try to vote early. Voting early is truly important. We need to do all this. We need to do more. We need to win, okay? Focus on winning. For 10 days, focus on winning, and feel free to write me, feedback@rallyfortherepublic.com. You know that I'm always going to encourage you to stay in the fight and to never give up on our republic. I'm Bryan Rudnick. I just want to bless you, bless America, bless your families, bless the people of Israel who are still under attack as we speak right now. And before you go, I just got to remind you, this episode is brought to us by Bob Rubin of Rubin Wealth Advisors, my friend, and you should schedule a call with them at rubinwa.com. Hopefully some of you have been smart enough to do that already and remind him that Bryan Rudnick sent you. Ask him what he's been doing for the last few months. And I'm telling you to ask him that because when you realize what he's been doing for the last few months, you're going to realize that Bob is a true conservative. He's the kind of American who gets it. He is a true patriot. And that's why you'll understand when you talk to him that he can help you and your family. So I'm going to remind you again to visit rubinwa.com and schedule a call with Bob Rubin. I'm Bryan Rudnick. Thank you again for listening to Rally for the Republic.
Thank you for joining us on Rally for the Republic, where we are fighting for America's future. Visit 1776coalition.com. Rally for the Republic podcast is available on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and download. Join Bryan Rudnick next time as we continue to fight for the American way of life and challenge the hypocrisy. This is Rally for the Republic.